Hey there, Alan Matthews here. In this video, we are going to look at a way to figure out the tricky rhythms. You can figure it out, or if you're having a problem in a piece with the rhythm, then this is a way to work. This is a process you can use to fix the rhythm where you fully understand it and play it right every single time. So to begin with, you have to identify and actually know that you have a problem with the rhythm in some little spot. So how do you do this? Well, you could record yourself and then go along and just, be keeping time and say, oh, this spot, I seem to be messing that up, and then come back to it. Or if somebody, if you start just noticing, I think there's something going on here, or somebody like lifts their eyebrows at you when you're playing in that spot, something like that. To start with, we're just going to look at this one. This is just from a little Targa mazurka. And this little rhythm right here, I'm just going to play this for you first, and then we're going to talk about this and use this as a template to, or as an example, so that we can actually go through this process. So that's the passage. Now, what oftentimes happens in here is this note right here gets rushed. So something like, or same thing right here for that note, or this note right here in the accompaniment gets pushed and isn't precisely placed, and that happens a whole lot in this type of writing where you have a melody and then you have this steady underpinning rhythm under here, and so then this gets misplaced. So regardless of what, we have this, and so our first thing we can look at is what is the smallest note value that we have here, and in this case it's 16th notes. So what we're going to do then, of course this is assuming that you've clapped and counted it and all that kind of stuff, but even if you don't know how to clap and count it, then this step will actually help you with that as well. So what we've done here to simplify this is we've just looked at the melody, because that's really where the action's happening up here, right? We've looked at the melody line, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to isolate the melody line, and then we're going to fill out all the 16th notes for the entire line. And so what was this, which is a dotted eighth and a 16th, right, now becomes all 16ths. So then we have, instead of that dotted eighth right there, this was our, we had the dot and then this kind of sloppy, but you get the picture of it. That we, instead of that, then we just fill them all out. So a dotted eighth becomes 3/16. Same thing, the eighth notes that were here, these were just eighth notes, eighth notes, eighth notes. They become all 16th notes. So eighth notes, 2 16th notes, and you just play all of those and you just fill them in as you go along. And then what we do also is we count along with it, 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda. So now what we have sounds like this. And of course your fingering is going to be different for all the stages and everything, but assuming that you can work the fingering out, then we have this right here. We have 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 1. And it doesn't matter if you're using the same left-hand fingerings as whenever you're playing the other thing or what. It's just getting to where you completely understand where in 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda, where each note falls. And so then master this step as if it's its own thing. So take it out of the piece, you'll come back to the piece, it can rest for a second. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and oops and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 1. Now, why did we this was a half note, this note right here. So why don't we just stop there? Well, because something else needs to happen over here in our bass later, and so we're just going to keep on the entire passage and just do all the 16th notes for the entire line. I would just do this with a small section at one time. So once we get that, our next step could be this step 2, or it could be the next step after this as well. And you could switch this one and the next one if you wanted to, depending on your mood for the day. But now we're just going to add in the bass underneath all these 16th notes. So we did just have just the melody. Now we're going to keep all the 16th notes but add everything else in. So we have 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 1. And of course we always go over the bar line here. So never end it on a bar line, just as a side note. Always go over the bar line. It's just more musical that way. So now we've actually put everything else in underneath that 16th note. So now we have a structure. And that structure is like a scaffolding that just keeps everything absolutely lined up so that we constantly have this thing going on under all this, and we can place each note with exactly the right 16th note in the treble. So that solves this problem right here. Because if you haven't been counting and you just played it, and you didn't count and you were just kind of putting it in by feel, which may or may not be right because our feelings can very easily betray us. Instead, we have 1 E and 2 E and we have an exact spot to put this lower note. And so everything has its exact spot. So after this step, then we can start to accent the upper notes where they change. So now we're actually separating, and really by accenting, this means, it doesn't mean playing that one note loud, it means playing everything else very quietly. So instead of just going, it's very quiet on the other ones. So we're accenting the actual notes from the original melody at this point. Now you can also do that before you put the other voices back in. If you'll notice, we're accenting this top note right here, when really we won't even be playing that high E at that point, but still that is where the note goes. That's where something goes, and so we're going to accent it there. And that just tells us this is exactly where things happen. So then you can do this beforehand, or you could put this in with everything and accent it just that way. All right, now I should have said you continue to count out loud this entire time, because part of figuring out a tricky rhythm and most effectively working through it is to understand exactly how everything lines up. And counting out loud will help you do that. If you cannot count it out loud, then you probably don't really understand what's going on with the rhythm. You might have some sort of feeling like, oh, I know what it feels like to play it, but that just is really fickle, and you don't really understand it at that point. Not cerebrally understand it. You couldn't reproduce it if you were 10 degrees hotter or whatever it is. If you were 10 degrees hotter, we'd have bigger problems than this rhythm. Now what we can do is remove the extra subdivisions while still thinking them and still counting out loud. So now we have been going. So now we just go 1 E and 2 E and 3 E, and because we've already figured out where everything falls, and we're still thinking da 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 right along with it. So we have that thing going on. We've had our ear still filling in all the notes, but we just happen to not be playing them. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 1. Missed it. 1. There it is. So that is the process. So to quickly review, you identify you take just the melody or the moving line or whatever it is, and you fill in all the 16th notes or all the 8th notes, whatever the smallest note value you're dealing with is, and fill that out, and then play it along, just the melody, play it along, accenting the changing notes or the actual what you'll end up playing. Add the other voices back in, either before or after you accent, or both, or whatever you like. And then finally, once you can master that, then you take out the other notes that you don't need. And so that's how you do it right there. And at the end, what do you have but this beautiful, rhythmically precise line? Hope you've enjoyed that little tip. Please subscribe to this channel. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.